No other species on Earth gives birth quite like humans do. A giraffe gives birth standing up, and her calf falls nearly 6 feet to the ground. And within an hour, that calf is walking. A horse can be born, stand, and run within hours. Most mammals experience labor that lasts minutes to a few hours, with minimal apparent distress. And their newborns are mobile and capable almost immediately. Human birth is different. It is long, often 12 to 24 hours for a first birth. It is dangerous enough that throughout most of human history, it was the leading cause of death for women of reproductive age. And it is, by every measure we have, extraordinarily painful. Among the most intense pain experiences a human body can undergo, more intense by self-reported pain scores than many broken bones. Why? Why does the species with the most advanced brain on the planet, capable of building cities and curing diseases and reaching the moon, have one of the most physically dangerous and painful birth processes in the entire animal kingdom? The answer is one of the strangest and most fascinating stories in human evolution, and it comes down to a conflict between two of the very things that made us human in the first place. To understand why human birth is so painful, you have to understand what anthropologists call the obstetrical dilemma. And it starts with two evolutionary developments that happened to our ancestors at roughly the same time. And that turned out to be in direct competition with each other. The first development was walking upright. Somewhere between 4 and 6 million years ago, our ancestors began walking on 2 legs instead of 4. Bipedalism freed up the hands for tool use, allowed for more efficient long-distance travel, and offered a better vantage point for spotting predators and prey on the African savanna. It was one of the most important adaptations in the history of our lineage. But walking upright required a fundamental redesign of the pelvis. A 4-legged animal's pelvis is essentially a horizontal support structure, distributing weight across 4 limbs. A 2-legged animal's pelvis has to support the entire weight of the upper body on 2 legs, absorb the shock of walking and running, and do it all through a narrower, more vertically oriented bone structure. The human pelvis evolved into a relatively narrow, basin-shaped structure optimized for efficient, upright walking. The second development was a dramatically larger brain, starting around 2 million years ago and accelerating significantly with the emergence of Homo sapiens. Human brain size increased dramatically compared to our evolutionary ancestors and compared to every other primate. The modern human brain is roughly 3 times larger relative to body size than would be expected for a mammal of our build. This larger brain is the foundation of everything that makes humans distinct: language, complex reasoning, tool innovation, culture, and the cognitive capabilities that allowed us to become the dominant species on the planet. Here is the problem: a narrower pelvis optimized for walking, a much larger head required to house a much larger brain, both evolving at the same time in the same species, pulling in completely opposite directions through the exact same anatomical bottleneck: the birth canal. This conflict gets called the obstetrical dilemma because it really is a genuine evolutionary trade-off with no perfect solution. A pelvis wide enough to deliver a large-brained infant easily would compromise walking efficiency. A pelvis narrow enough for maximally efficient walking would make delivering a large-headed infant nearly impossible. Evolution found a partial solution, and it is genuinely remarkable. Human babies are born at an earlier developmental stage relative to brain growth than almost any other primate. A chimpanzee infant's brain at birth is already about 40% of its eventual adult size. A human infant's brain at birth is only about 25% of its eventual adult size. Human babies are, in a very real sense, born unfinished. The brain continues to grow dramatically after birth, doubling in size within the first year of life alone, a rate of growth that does not happen inside any other primate after birth. This is why human infants are so helpless compared to other newborn mammals. A newborn foal can stand and walk within hours. A newborn human cannot even hold up its own head for months. Anthropologists sometimes refer to this extended period of helplessness as the 4th trimester, a recognition that human infant development effectively continues outside the womb in a way that would, in other species, happen before birth. This trade-off, earlier birth, continued brain growth outside the womb, is evolution's compromise to the obstetrical dilemma. The infant's head is still as large as it can possibly be while still fitting through the maternal pelvis, but it is delivered before the brain finishes the most demanding phase of its growth. This is the fundamental reason birth is so difficult. The human infant's head, even at this earlier developmental stage, is still pushing the absolute limits of what the maternal pelvis can accommodate. So why does it hurt as much as it does? The mechanics of human labor explain the pain itself in remarkable detail. The uterus is a powerful muscle, and during labor, it contracts with tremendous force to gradually push the baby down and through the birth canal. These contractions are not gentle. The pressure generated inside the uterus during a strong contraction can exceed 50 millimeters of mercury above resting pressure, comparable to forces used in some surgical procedures sustained repeatedly over hours. The cervix, normally a narrow, closed structure, must dilate or open from completely closed to approximately 10 centimeters in diameter. This process, called cervical effacement and dilation, involves the physical stretching and thinning of tissue that is not designed under normal circumstances to expand anywhere near that much. The nerve endings in this region are dense and highly sensitive, and the stretching triggers some of the most intense pain signals the human body is capable of generating. As the baby's head moves through the pelvis, it must navigate a genuinely tight passage, rotating and adjusting its position as it moves through different planes of the pelvic structure, a process obstetricians call the cardinal movements of labor. This is not a straight line journey. The baby's head turns and tilts at specific points to align with the narrowest dimensions of the maternal pelvis at each stage. The pressure on surrounding tissue, nerves, and pelvic structures during this process is substantial and sustained. And finally, the tissues of the vaginal canal and surrounding area must stretch to an extraordinary degree to allow the baby to be delivered, tissue that is rich in nerve endings and not naturally built to expand to that extent. This final stage, often called the pushing stage, combines the muscular effort of the mother with the continued pressure of the baby's passage and is frequently described as the most intensely painful portion of the entire process. Researchers using validated pain measurement scales have found that the pain reported during active labor frequently exceeds the pain scores reported for conditions like kidney stones, severe burns, and many bone fractures. This is not exaggeration. It is measurable, documented, and consistent across studies. There is also a hormonal dimension to labor pain that adds another layer to the story. Oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone because of its role in bonding and social connection, is also the hormone responsible for triggering and sustaining uterine contractions during labor. The same chemical that helps a mother bond intensely with her newborn immediately after birth is the hormone driving the painful contractions that brought that baby into the world. Evolution appears to have linked the pain-generating mechanism of birth directly to the bonding mechanism that follows it, possibly because the intensity of the experience and the intensity of the bond reinforce each other. Endorphins, the body's natural pain-relieving chemicals, also rise dramatically during labor, reaching levels far above those seen in most other physically demanding experiences. This is the body's own attempt to manage an extraordinarily difficult physiological event. Despite this natural endorphin surge, the underlying pain signal from labor remains powerful enough to register as one of the most intense experiences most people will ever undergo. Here is what makes this story even more remarkable. Humans appear to be the only species that requires routine assistance during birth. In virtually every documented human culture throughout history, women in labor have been attended by other women, mothers, sisters, experienced midwives, community members. This is not simply a cultural preference. Many anthropologists argue it reflects a genuine biological reality. The difficulty and danger of human birth, created by the obstetrical dilemma, made some form of assistance close to a survival necessity. A laboring woman frequently could not reposition a poorly oriented infant, manage complications, or physically assist a difficult delivery entirely alone. This need for assisted birth may have shaped human social structures in ways that extend far beyond the birth process itself. Strengthening female cooperative networks, encouraging the development of accumulated practical knowledge passed between generations of women, and creating one of the deepest and most universal forms of human community support found in any culture on Earth. So why is human birth so painful? Because two of the most important adaptations in our evolutionary history, walking upright and developing an extraordinarily large brain, happen to place opposing demands on the exact same narrow passage through the body. Evolution solved this with a partial compromise: babies born earlier, with brains still growing rapidly outside the womb. But that compromise still requires delivering a head that pushes against the absolute limits of what the human pelvis can accommodate, through tissue and structures put under tremendous and rapid strain. The pain of human birth is not a flaw or a mistake. It is the direct, physical signature of the very same evolutionary trade-off that gave humanity our two most defining physical traits: the upright walk that took us across continents, and the extraordinary brain that built everything we now call civilization. Every person who has ever been born came through that same evolutionary compromise. It is, in the most literal sense possible, written into the price of being human. If this gave you a new appreciation for one of the most remarkable processes in all of biology, subscribe and leave a comment below.